Everyone, thanks for joining us today on this conversation. It's part of the BIPOCann and Cannabis Business Office Social Equity Mentorship Program. Today, we are kicking our conversation off to talk about business foundations. Attending the webinar are some of the social equity business grant winners through the Cannabis Business Office's pilot or business grant program. And over the next couple of months, we're working together to provide some educational support, some direct mentorship, some live workshops. But really, the goal of this program is for us to be resources to support your business growth, and also to, maximize the reach and the impact of the funding that you receive to support your businesses through the CBO. Today, I'd like to introduce our speakers who are going to share some of their subject matter expertise in a few areas. We have Rachel Ardenoy, who's with RZA Legal. We have Gene Casey with Jack Accounting, and Levon Terry with Cap Fluent. All right, so everyone here is participating either as a instructor or we're providing some direct mentorship to one of the to an attendee who's participating in this cohort. Levon and Rachel are both Colorado-based. Jean is in Phoenix, Arizona, but her services are able to help business owners all across the country. She'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit. But just to give you guys give you all an idea of what we're going to cover today. We'll start to really focus on what we believe are some of the important building blocks to set you up for success over the next few months. We're going to kick that off with Rachel speaking a little bit about some considerations from like a legal and a compliance standpoint. After that, Jean will talk about accounting and financial management, and Levon will close it out by being able to share a little bit about considerations that you should think of if you want to prepare your business for, funding, capital, any type of business financing. Prior to us launching this program, we gave questionnaires for everyone, and 90% of the respondents here said that capital and access to capital is one of their biggest pain points. And before we get there to doing that ask, we just want to make sure that you have everything checked off that you need. So that's why we're trying to go through that progression and have these awesome speakers here to help you out today. Just for some housekeeping, there is a chat. There is like a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to send questions throughout the presentation. We will have a few minutes Q&A, in between each presenter, and at the end we will also have an opportunity to ask additional questions. And finally, we may have one additional speaker join us towards the end who will talk a little bit about just some entrepreneurial readiness, some things that can help you as we start to do the business workshop that we will have in person in a couple of weeks. So if you see another face pop up on the screen, don't be surprised. We'll make that introduction when it's ready. So enough talking by me. Rachel, feel free to take it over. And if there's anything that you all need to do from a screen share perspective, you have that capability too.
Okay. Excellent. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rachel Ardenoy. I am a cannabis business attorney. I have been working with licensed marijuana businesses and entrepreneurs wanting to get into the cannabis industry and their investors and their landlords here in Colorado since 2015. It's all I do. I'm also licensed in Florida, Colorado, and New Jersey. And so we have a lot of new business owners that we're working with in New Jersey, also going through their process and their application. So we've been working with startup cannabis businesses for 8 years at this point in Colorado. I'm really excited to be part of this program, to be a mentor. So thank you so much for taking advantage of this opportunity. It's a really good resource. I'm thinking it's going to be a great programming for the next 10 weeks to really help you like Ernest said, really extend the reach of the grant that you have been awarded. Congrats to everybody who's been awarded some grants. So as a small business attorney and regulatory attorney, what I see, I'm here to talk about essentially what are the business foundations, what are the issues that I see from an attorney's perspective, because when you're an entrepreneur, and I'm an entrepreneur too, I own my cannabis law firm. So, it's not licensed by the marijuana industry, the marijuana enforcement division, but I'm licensed by the Supreme Court for my licensure. So I'm used to going through and jumping through hoops because I also operate in a highly regulated industry practicing law. So doubly so and working with cannabis clients. So that being said, we are more alike, I think, than different. And as you know, if you're a business owner, you're just getting started, if this is your first business, your 10th business, the founders are project managers. You are project managing your business to get off the ground. And so, as you know, from any other business, or if this is your first, time around opening a business, there's so many steps, there's so many moving parts. We know time is money. We know that knowing the proper order of doing things will save you time, will save you money. So that's kind of really the goal of what I'm here for through the program, and also through the other program that I've established through the Bar Association, which is a pro bono referral program where you can get free legal advice from volunteer attorneys. Because, just piggybacking on what Ernest just finished with, which is, that we know that access to capital is the biggest pain point. But why? What are the things that we need the capital for? And that's what I encourage you to sort of take a look at what this program is going to offer you, because a lot of the services and resources that you're going to be receiving through this program are things that you would have otherwise needed to budget in and have capital for. So from my perspective, and why I'm so dedicated to working with equity applicants is because I know that part of the capital aspect is hiring the right professionals. And lawyers are expensive and cost money. And so if we can provide you some services, maybe not all your legal services, but get you pointed in the right direction so you can save some of those dollars and put them elsewhere, then that's the goal, to try to, again, extend the reach of the grant that you've been awarded. So I'm here to really talk about three main objectives today. And then, you'll hear from me throughout this program in the next 10 weeks. But essentially establishing the business entity, obtaining the licensure, and then becoming operational being the three sort of steps in front of all of you today. And number one, first step, many of you are already there. You had to have set up your LLC or your corporation with the Secretary of State. You had to have already gotten some you're finding the suitability through the Marijuana Enforcement Division. So you're already kind of through a lot of these hoops, and you know what to expect from that perspective. A few other additional things that I think are super important at this phase are making sure your charter documents are actually really good documents. Charter documents are those founding sort of constitution of your business, your operating agreement if you're an LLC, or your shareholders agreement and bylaws if you're a corporation. And I, in my notes I'm looking at here, I included that not an online free form either. You need to actually read these things, and they need to, at the end of the day, what I talk about these documents as, I refer to them as a corporate prenup. Because I used to be a family attorney. A lot of people are familiar with what a prenup is. A prenuptial agreement is an agreement where people say, we love each other, we're going on our honeymoon, but if we ever break up in the future, this is what's going to be the rule of the road. And so that's exactly what an LLC operating agreement and shareholder agreement is. Yes, you and your partners, your visions are aligned right now. So hopefully you don't really have to get the operating agreement out. But, the operating agreements that I set up for clients, small cultivator clients, 5 years ago are now being potentially litigated because things change, families change, things change in people's personal lives. You have to make plans for this ahead of time, or else it's going to be messy at the time. So the importance of those charter documents and making sure they look good and that they are tailored to what you are doing and not just what a form you found on Google or that you Frankenstein's together. So definitely worth talking to professionals and making sure you have those documents in place, not just for like the things that is talked about, right? Having a game plan between you all when things are different down the road and navigating those interpersonal issues, but also those are what we call business formalities. And it doesn't help to have a limited liability company if you're just treating it like it's yourself, right? If it's So from a legal perspective, we have this concept called piercing the corporate veil. So if you are not maintaining corporate formalities, i.e. having an operating agreement, having meeting minutes, writing down meeting minutes, having an annual meeting minute at least, having some corporate resolutions like, hey, the board did agree on this, we all signed it, see, that it is important to have those to, number one, back up legal decisions when in the future you might have a disagreement between the owners or a third party in the company, and also protecting you from that liability. So twofold reasons why it's important to have your sort of paperwork, have your business house in order moving forward. We all know MED asks for these things, and local governments, when you get your license, you have to submit these anyway. So it's not like you can't get away with saying, I don't have an operating agreement. Even if you're a single member operating, you have to have an operating agreement. So, just one thing I think that's kind of important from that first phase of establishing the business entity is making sure those the corporation itself is being papered properly. And then I'll touch on this briefly, but this is sort of hearkening to the next two speakers and other resources you're going to get through this program, but figuring out what is your unique selling proposition. I had a discussion with someone on LinkedIn the other day because they were saying, like, what problems do you solve? What does your brand do that's different than other brands? And I wanted to point out that, like, we have a lot of solutions on the market for problems we don't have. And that is not really, and I will leave that to the other more, more focused on those areas, storytellers, branding, marketing, but making sure that, you're actually have a unique selling proposition, that you're fulfilling a need, solving a real problem that people have. And then from that comes, your business plan, your SWOT analysis, your pro formas, your budgeting, your marketing, all of the operational things to make your company, people want your company, right? So, yes, let's get the corporate bones in order. But, how are you going to fill that in? That's with, all of the other folks that are going to help you, that are better at speaking about that than me, that I'll be also taking notes on. Because again, I own a cannabis business. So I want to know these great nuggets that you'll be getting soon as well. So the next step is obtaining the business licensure, right? So many of you have already gone through finding a suitability. We have those, just the processing in Colorado. Many of you are already aware of this, where we have dual licensing requirement, that you have a license from the Marijuana Enforcement Division and a license from the local entity. Not all local entities have even allowed for cannabis, commercial cannabis operations. We have towns coming online every election cycle, it seems like. A few towns just legalized for adult use cannabis in the mountains, up here in northern Colorado where I live. So it's happening slowly but surely, but not everywhere does allow it. So if you don't have a location in mind yet, that's something that you want to make sure that you're doing the due diligence on the local requirements, because local governments are allowed to, number one, say yes or no, we're going to allow it. They also get to say, where does that location business get to be located? What are locational buffer zones to say you can't be too close to a church or a school or another cannabis business? Or yes, we allow cannabis licensure, and we've given all the licenses out. That's something, a lot of research that we do for our clients when they're still trying to nail down an address, because you're at the finding a suitability stage. The next step is, depending on where you're going to be, if some local governments say, check with us first, and then we'll let you go submit to the state, because they don't want you to waste money submitting to the state, and then the locals never giving you a chance. So that's kind of all over the map here in Colorado. It's a very patchwork set of regulations depending on where you're located in the state. So making sure the process is right, because you don't want to waste these thousands of dollars submitting license applications to the state, when they have, by statute, 45 to 90 days to approve or deny a new license. It is out of their hands. So if for some reason there's an issue with processing that license and it's coming up on the 90 days, they're going to ask you to withdraw your application. And that stinks, because you're going to lose some application money, or they'll reimburse, I think, the license fee, but not the application fee. So, again, this goes back to the first thing I said, being the project manager to get your business off the ground. So much of it has to do with proper timing. And because there's so many moving parts between the state and the local processes. So kudos, everyone here has gotten through suitability. That's a huge hill. The next step is getting through business licensure at the state and local level. But we know that's not the biggest hill. The third hill is the biggest hill. It's getting operational. It's like, okay, well, now we have the green light to start at the starting line now that we've got the licenses. Now, what do we do? So that getting operational aspect, that is when we're dealing with pulling permits for your physical location, making, lining up different professionals for the build out, even if it's a store and you're thinking, all I need to do is put up some drywall. All I need to do is, I just need one extra outlet over here. The local governments use cannabis business applications as an opportunity to get your entire facility up to code. So that we run into a problem because, right, one of the other issues as far as access to capital is I talked about, but why? What things cost money? The real estate, that's usually a huge ticket item, right? Paying your rent or paying a security deposit or figuring out that due diligence or the build out, even if it's a shell and you just have to put up some walls and throw some display cases in there and make it, a room that's, going to be qualified as a vault, for security purposes. That stuff adds up. And then knowing which, finding the right contractors and the right mechanical engineers and the right architects. It's hard out there. Even 10 years after us starting here in cannabis in Colorado, it is still hard to find quality professional help to check all the buckets or to check all the things to get you operational. So, as far as like, if you find yourself in a spot where it's a hurry up and wait, you submitted the finding of suitability and then you wait. So now you got the letter. So what do you do next is, if your license is now pending at the state, again, you're waiting. You submit the application, you're waiting for them to ask you questions. What can you be doing while you're waiting? You can be doing homework. You can be, interviewing these potential folks that you're going to need to work with, general contractors, mechanical engineering, all of these different, getting different quotes for that kind of work. Reaching out for professional assistance, trying to identify at what point you need different professionals to help you, whether that's bookkeeping and, accounting or on the legal side of things, negotiating that lease, making sure that, the lease is going to be beneficial. So many different moving parts there. I want to keep it brief. That was my timer set. I wanted to make sure I was staying within my time. And obviously we could talk about this for days and days. There's so many things to think about as far as getting operational and getting up and going, let alone putting a story to that. So that being said, again, I work pretty closely with Ernest. We put on different webinars through BIPOCann. Also work pretty closely with Tristan with CBO. So, if you have any questions, my contact information will be available. Like I said, you can reach out for a volunteer attorney for 30 minutes, free consultation through the Social Equity Pro Bono program. And, good luck to all of you and congrats again on getting this amazing grant opportunity.
Hey, great, Rachel. Thank you for sharing all of that insight. Just a couple of things. You mentioned the pro bono program that you offer. If you could provide us, with a link or information to that, if you have it, can share that.
Yeah, I'll drop the link in the chat in just a minute. Right. Sure.
Perfect. And also, obviously, like everyone that's involved in the program is at a different point in their business journey. But you mentioned a couple of things about step 3, that toughest, hurdle, making sure that you have all of the relevant services and, that to help you get to where you need to go. If you probably have like a list of some of the most commonly like sought after, services and things like that. Any information that you can share with us, whether it's, today or or preparation for the workshop would be cool. But, also within BIPOCann, we've already done like a lot of that vetting too, so that we have some services that we can make available to you. So try to introduce you to some of the professionals within the network, which you'll have access to over the, next year. And hopefully that can assist you too. Before we go to Jean, are there any questions for Rachel? It looks like one's in the chat. Nope, that was you. Okay. If there's questions that come up, we'll get to them during the call. All All right, everyone, we're going to transition over to Gene Casey, who is with Jack Accounting. Gene, I believe, do you have the ability to share your screen? You had some information you wanted to share with us. Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and let's see, is my screen sharing? Okay, and okay. All right, can everybody see my screen? Hello?
I don't see it yet.
You don't see it yet? Okay, hold on one second. We just did this, so.
You have presenter capability now, so you should be good.
Okay. Okay, so share screen, there it is. And the window. Okay. Okay. Do you guys see it now at this point?
Yes, I can see it. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to present to you today. My name is Jean A. Casey of JAC Accounting, and I have been working as an accountant for about 30 years now, and the last 4 years has been cannabis heavy. I am a founding member of National Association of Cannabis, Accounting and Tax Professionals. I also received training in the DOPE CFO network, as well as a supporter of BIPOCann. And so accounting work for me is my passion. I enjoy helping businesses survive and thrive. This helps support the community as well as owners build something with lasting value. I apologize. So why dope CFO professionals? Um, We are a nationally recognized cannabis and CBD accounting and tax professionals. Our owner has been recognized by AICPA and CIMA. And the reason why having an accounting professional is important to you is inexperienced accounting professionals who aren't familiar with the specific needs of cannabis companies treat their businesses like every other company, and they are getting business owners into hot water. As a result, not knowing how to properly account or have accounting practices for this industry can lead to disastrous things. Being a CFO, a dope CFO, we have proprietary skills and knowledge in regards to cost accounting and saving your data in regards to having it in a centralized location, all the things that you're going to have to handle and process and go through. You want to have that in a location that you can easily and readily have available to investors for capital and things like that. Our goal is to empower cannabis CEOs and investors and executives with some basic information so that you can hire the right professional and that you know what to expect from your accounting team. Um, it's not all of our products that we do and set up your books and things like that, we're setting it up in mind of 280E tax codes and 470 tax codes. So we're ensuring that you're going to hit the ground running, you're going to stay in business, because we are going to ensure that you're provided with the right financials and things like that. We're also going to have internal controls for your business and policies that are protecting you as the business owner, as well as if you want to submit those things to if you want to submit those things to investors, we have all those things readily available. And you want to have this information available to you because you're just starting your cannabis business out. Why bother with good accounting? You might think about that. Cannabis startup companies are not properly preparing themselves for um, the pre-revenue stage of a business. And because of this, unintentionally subjecting themselves to big financial and legal risk. There's all types of pre-revenue licenses requirements, cost set up to your business. And when you're looking for investors, they want to know what's the value of your business, or what do you have in place in regards to a business plan or action plan to get started. And so you don't want to come across with having to pay more fees, legal fees, or interest by the state and by the IRS. And so one of the other things is cost accounting is major when you are doing cannabis accounting, because you're needing to understand this information on a basis that's monthly so that you can understand what you're doing and how your finances are looking. The value that this adds is that you can always be audit ready when it's time to close loans, or as you guys both mentioned earlier, you're looking for capital. And so when you're looking for capital, they want to know what's your books are looking like, and so they can have a better estimate as to how much they can value what you have already in place. And then when you have all this rock solid accounting in place, you can better manage your cash flow. And this is the key to success for cannabis business owners. The other thing that we don't like to look at also when you're thinking about accounting is, like she said earlier, things change throughout the business venture. And so when it's time to sell your business, or it's time to, break away from those operation agreements, then you want to have a better value of your business, and it can be valued higher when you're trying to sell it when your books are in order. So um, some people have just started out and getting started with their applications and getting started with their business, and then there are people who are already in the stage of managing their business. So you have to think of certain things in regards to accounting professionals, someone that's on your team and that they're going to provide you value. These things lead to easier investments to capital, as well as giving you a sense of knowledge as to where your business is going, where your money is going, and how things are properly handled within your business. Uh, you're thinking of tax goals. That's of course down the line, but when you're starting out, you really have to think about those things in the beginning as well. So that comes in place of knowing what your entity structure is set up as, making sure your entity objectives are clear so that you can properly categorize your chart of accounts, and making sure that your reconciliations and things that you're doing follows all the way through to the end result, which is taxes. You want to make sure you have an accountant that's not focused on just beating the tax codes of 280E and 471, that they're also there to help build your brand and growing the market that you're sharing in, and also the location of your business. So there's a lot of things that the accountant can bring to the table that they should be bringing to the table. And if you don't have a cannabis specific accountant, then you want to take a look at what they are providing for you. Because if they are not providing these key essential things, then you need to reevaluate your work with them. The ongoing basis of things that they should provide for you is they should also provide month-end tie-outs so that they can be audit ready, as well as investor ready, and as well as lender ready. So what we do is we pride ourselves on providing you with everything in one location, so that you can understand that you can present this not only to yourself to be able to look at your financials, but you can present this to other people at a quick drop of a hat of just being able to go. So if you're having someone present financials to you and they're not, giving you an understanding of that, or they're at a different level and they're not understanding the cannabis industry aspect of it, then you want to reevaluate that, because everything that an accountant does for you should be value added. Um, and then I just have a few little slides here to kind of show you just a brief thing in regards. We set you up, if you're just now starting out, then we want to ensure that you have everything in one-stop shopping. So we put everything on a secure data warehouse. And on that secure data warehouse, you're going to go through so many different moving parts and paperwork and things like that, that we put it all organized fashion for you, that is organized to a way that you know where compliance stuff is, employee stuff, and things that if you have different verticals in your business, then you want to ensure that everything is separated and everything is in a organized fashion, so that when it's time to be able to be reviewed, or if you need to get access to something, you can just easily click in there, or you can ask your accountant and say, hey, I need something for some employees that I don't think, for whatever reason, I don't think that they're needing to be written up or something like that. We have everything in there and it's organized, so it's not a matter of digging through paperwork or anything like that. Um, the other aspect of things that we like to do is that we provide a action plan. Whatever aspect or whatever stage that you are in your business, you want your accountant to be involved and communicate to you where are the steps at, so that you ensure that they're on task with what you want and that you guys talked about. Now, this is just a sample one, but if you were, coming on board and we needed to get everything in place for you, starting your chart of accounts and getting your onboarding paperwork together, or tax returns or anything like that. This is a action plan that is very clear and concise, and it allows you to see where we're going, and we're checking things off, and then at what stage are we at in understanding the growth. And the objective here is that you're going to grow your business, you're going to grow capital, and then we're also going to be on top of tax planning for your company. And all investors involved are going to be on board too, and having a knowledge of that. All of this is able to mitigate risk, and it allows you to pivot when challenges arise. And this is better communication for the management team, as well as the board and investors and lenders throughout. So this is, if you do not have an accountant, ensure that your accounting professional is providing you with these types of things, so that you can survive and thrive in this industry. And then just to kind of get in closing of things, the value that we bring as Dope CFO members are that we want to ensure that the cost savings when it's tax time, that you're going to pay taxes. We all know that's the heavily taxed niche. And so with that being said, there's a lot of taxes and a lot of different codes for different states. And with that, we go nationwide with our accounting services. I'm in Arizona right now, but I know that there's 5 cannabis friendly banks. So in Colorado. And so most people are like, how can you do safe banking and things like that? Well, we have the opportunity and the network and the resources within our group to kind of say, hey, I have a client in this state and they need a bank. And I may not be in that specific state, but I can definitely reach out and get a resource to my clients. So you want that person, your accountant, to work with you and be able to find solutions for you, and just partner with you. Once again, I talked about our data room. If you don't have that data room for your documents, I mean, this is very imperative. I know a lot of people can get bogged down and get lost in paperwork or emails, and that's not what you want to do. You want to keep everything in a location that you can easily access when it's time for, deadlines or things like that. So in closing, I would like to just say that you want to work with someone who is a trained cannabis accounting expert, someone who is not just going to treat your business like anyone else. They're going to dive in and they're going to understand what you're actually doing, and so that they can provide that expertise in the way that you need it to be in that partnership. They need to also increase your cash flow, or having someone that's going to work side by side with you is going to increase your cash flow, and they're going to be a value to you in the process. And having internal audits and reviews will have you a sense of understanding and calm when it is time to actually have that true audit. We all know it's not federally legal, but it will be audited at some time. So as long as your books and your accounting is in order, you have nothing to worry about. So, in closing, if you want to speak with me further, I do free consultations as well for the cannabis industry. You don't have to just be a startup. I help all cannabis industry business owners at that time. So, once again, thank you for allowing me to share what I do.
Hey, Gene, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. One of the things that you mentioned was, the Section 280E of the tax code,
Mhm.
and I imagine that like most of the folks who are watching or going through that process of getting their business established or currently managing it have familiarity with 280E. But could you just give us a little overview of what that is and why, how it's affecting cannabis businesses?
In the short answer, it's more so about how your business is taking deductions. There's certain things that are, depending on what type of cannabis company you have, things are allowable and deductions and things are not. And so that's one of the things that we kind of pride ourselves on, ensuring that your chart of accounts are in line so that you don't take deductions that are not privy to the section of saying are allowable expenses, because we have people that are taking expenses that are not allowable, and it's like certain things that are not cost of goods sold, and they're taking or salaries or rents or certain things like that, and they're not subjected to that. And so that's where they get in trouble, taking expenses that they think should be under the normal financial accounting. You should be able to take those expenses, but then when you break it down, certain inventories or depreciation or costs are not allowed.
Okay. Well, thank you. Um, you know, uh, Blaze had asked a question about if cannabis delivery companies were subject to 280E. To my knowledge, I know that so cannabis businesses are only under 280E. They're only allowed to deduct expenses that are part of the costs of goods sold,
Yes.
equivalent, right? And
Yes.
I believe that some folks could, you can make the argument that the cannabis deliveries have a cost to selling their goods. So purchasing delivery vehicles,
Mhm.
for example, but I don't believe those expenses are tax deductible, right?
No, they're not tax deductible. However, there are other things that allow them to ensure that they're catching all their costs in their tracking of things. But as long as you're not like plant touching, or it's not something that involved in creation of it, then no, those aren't certain things that you could take costs for. But it's a delivery is more so treated just like a regular entity, and then there's certain things that kind of just enables them to ensure that they're just not taking extra stuff.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I think there's probably a lot of nuance there with
Yes.
folks that are trying to figure out, okay, when figuring out what does your balance sheet look like at the end of the year. Another
Mhm.
reason to just make sure you're legally compliant, speaking to what Rachel talked about earlier, and also working with a cannabis accountant that understands taking you through 280E. We didn't really
Mhm.
go into 471, but we'll make sure your information is available so we can share that. Um,
Okay.
um, Another thing that I just want to put in the chat is BIPOCann recently had a blog that was published that talked about some accounting basics, and it actually has a chart on there which gives an example of how a business not subject to ADE might be taxed as opposed to a cannabis business. So it shows that in general, like your tax rate is going to be a lot higher. So knowing that as you build is, and yeah, it can be up to 70%, like in the example that they use. So knowing that and figuring out ways for you to reduce that tax liability is going to be really important as you're trying to propel your business and for growth. Let's see. All right, so we're going to go over to Levon Terry now with CapFluent, and he's planning to share a little bit of insight that you should think about when you're considering pursuing business financing. So Levon, take it away.
Thanks, Ernest. So my name's Levon Terry. I run a advisory and consulting practice called CapFluent. And the long and short of it is at CapFluent, I help entrepreneurs build and unlock shareholder value. And as I've sat here and listened to both Gene and Rachel go through their parts of today's presentation, I know some of you may have been waiting for what I had to say, potentially thinking that I'm the one who has the keys to all the money that you need. But I would encourage you, especially since Ernest is recording this, to go back and listen again to what Gene and what Rachel had to say, because they really have the keys to what you need to unlock the capital that you need to grow your business. When I work with early stage entrepreneurs and startup businesses, I spend the majority of my time ensuring that they have those foundational pieces that Rachel and Gene were talking about in place before we can even take the next step. Without making sure you have the proper legal structure in place, without making sure you have the appropriate accounting in place, you don't have the proper foundation to build your business. And like I said, I'm here to help you build the value in your business and then unlock the value in that business. And we can't build anything on a shaky foundation. So take some time, go back to listen to what they said. It was all extremely valuable. What I do want to talk a little bit, though, about is what can that capital raising process look like for you as an early stage entrepreneur? There are a lot of different ways in which you can approach funding your business. I think in this world of Shark Tank and things of that nature, everybody feels like the easiest way to raise capital is to have a good idea, pitch it to some investors, give away a certain percentage of equity in your business, and then you're off and running. That is actually not the most common way for companies to fund their business. Most entrepreneurs fund their business the good old-fashioned way, right? With their own capital, with their own blood, with their own sweat, and yes, even their own tears. Unfortunately, we see all too often that many entrepreneurs pledge too much of their own assets and ultimately go broke trying to start their own business. And that's also not something I would advise. I think there's an appropriate balance between the two, of finding the right way to put your own skin in the game, your own money into this company that you believe in and that you're passionate about, but then also going out and finding external sources of financing and or capital. And there's a lot of different forms of financing out there. Each of you have tapped into a form of financing that not many cannabis businesses have access to, and that's a grant, right? There are all types of grants available to early stage companies. There's all types of lending platforms available to cannabis companies, depending on how you are actually operating your business and what your structure looks like. Yes, actually, banks can loan money to you for various parts of your business. It can be tough. I think it was Gene who mentioned that there are some banks in this industry that are very comfortable working with operators in the cannabis space. They have lending vehicles and financing vehicles available to you that you want to explore. Those are things that I think are really important when you look at the landscape of what your options are. What I really like to spend a lot of my time doing is again sitting on the same side of the table of the entrepreneur, helping them understand all of those options that are available to them, but more importantly, making sure there's the right alignment between what those options are and ultimately what your primary objectives are for your business. Understanding where you want to go with your business should actually dictate the type of financing that you use for your business. If you want to build a $200 million business that's going to pay you $5 million a year, then yes, you're going to probably need to go out and get Series A, Series B, Series C investments from venture capital firms and private equity firms. But guess what? That also means you're going to give up a lot of control and a lot of equity along the way. And even though you may be the CEO, when you give up control and you give up equity, that means you have bosses and other people to answer to that you may not have contemplated needing to answer to early in your business. If you want to be a true entrepreneur and you want to be your own boss and you want to continue to retain all that control and all that equity and know that, hey, maybe all I'm going to do at the end of the day is make a good living and make that good living and never have to have a true boss, then maybe you don't need to go out and raise a tremendous amount of capital. Maybe you can bootstrap your business and fund it through small business loans, fund it through cash flow, fund it through operations, so that you've kept everything for yourself and you get to decide exactly how to grow your business and what you want to do with those businesses. There's no right or wrong answer there, right? I'm not here to tell you one's better than the other. I'm not here to tell you that your dream isn't your dream. I'm here to help you understand that regardless of what that dream is, you need to make sure you understand the right and most efficient path to get to that dream. And so one of the things that I think that begs is, it's really easy to come up with a great idea. The hard part after we've got that foundation that we talked about with Gene and Rachel is executing on that idea. In our world, the easiest way to measure execution is through revenue, right? If you're generating money today, we can take a look at the books that Gene and her team have put in place, and we can come to a pretty good conclusion as to what type of operator you are. What do your gross margins look like? What are your net margins look like? What's your inventory numbers look like? There are a lot of different ways in which we can determine how good you are as an operator once you're generating revenue. But if you're not generating revenue, which I suspect many of you aren't, it's really tough to figure out how to, or to demonstrate that you're a good operator or that you're going to be able to execute on this great idea. And one of the things that I like to talk to early stage entrepreneurs about is there are still ways that you can illustrate and demonstrate that you're prepared to be a good operator and execute on your plan. And that's really being able to talk in great detail and great depth about the people in your organization and that you're going to need, the product that you're bringing to market and that unique value proposition that you have, the marketplace itself and the deal that you're bringing to the market. If you can talk in depth to those ideas and effectively pitch your company without your pitch deck or without any supporting material, but talk as if you are an expert, talk in depth, and be able to really convince the other people on the other side of the table that you know exactly what you're talking about and what you're going to do, that's a great way to demonstrate to somebody sitting on the other side of the table that you're going to be able to execute on that plan. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about is, well, who is it that's actually sitting on the other side of the table? This is something that I think a lot of people also miss, again, in this kind of Shark Tank world and Shark Tank environment. Not all investors are equal for your business. Said a different way, some money is more expensive than other money. There may be people that are willing to write you a check and you may not want that check. How is it that you're going to go through and vet who those potential investors are? When when Rachel was talking a little bit about agreements, shareholder agreements, and things of that nature, I heard an analogy one time that I thought was really good as it pertains to this. Some people can think of it as a marriage, and I think Rachel did a good job of kind of drawing that parallel. And yes, you are in many ways marrying your investors, but making sure you have those agreements in place and understanding what they mean ahead of time saves a lot of headaches. And the whole point of that was somebody told me once, I don't know why we call these things agreements. We should actually call them disagreements, because that's the only time they matter. Right. And I've always found that to be really, really true. And so when you're sitting across the table and evaluating who's going to invest in your company, you should say, what's it going to be like to be in a disagreement with this person? Is this somebody that I think I'm going to be able to work this problem out with? Because as inevitable, there's going to be problems in your business. No matter how strong the plan is, your plan is going to be different when the rubber meets the road. When you face problems, when there's hurdles, when the unknowns present themselves to you as an operator, it's going to be problematic for you. And who's sitting at the table with you is going to help you work through those problems. And some investors don't care about working through those problems with you. They're sitting there waiting for you to make a mistake so that they can try and take away everything that you've built. So make sure you've got a little bit of a process in thinking about, how am I screening these investors? Be able to have a conversation with them so that while you're pitching them, you're actually listening to those answers in such a way that you're kind of tuning into the things that you think may be a problem for you down the road. Are your visions shared for what you're ultimately trying to build? And know that as anxious as you are to bring in those investor dollars, the wrong investors are going to be just as anxious to want to invest in your company and take it away from you. The other thing that I think is important to think about is some of the things that these investors are looking at when they are trying to evaluate you as the individual, and to a certain extent your business, right? I've made a number of direct investments into this industry. So I like to say I sit on the same side of the table as the entrepreneur today, but I've been capital. I've been on the other side of the table many times. And there are a number of things that we try to look for to either A, get a better deal, or B, find an easy way to say no to this particular investment opportunity. And some of the red flags that we often look for, or that I would often look for, is, are there too many founders in this business, right? Have you brought in too many people early on where there's no way that there can be complete alignment between the vision when you've got 3 or 4 different people or 5 different people sitting at the table from the onset? They may say they have the same vision today, but when push comes to shove, it's really tough to have that type of alignment with those many people sitting at the table early on. How much overhead do you have in your business? If you've got too much overhead too early, it's going to be really difficult to be prudent with your investment dollars over the long term. Understanding what your burn rate is and how quickly you're going to burn through capital is going to be critical, because ultimately, no matter how much you think you have that burn rate dialed in and how much you think those costs are actually going to be, it's going to be more than that. And so making sure you keep your overhead low just ensures that you will survive longer than you would have if your burn rate was high. When I'm sitting across the table from you, are you trying to use too many buzzwords? Are you trying to use too much jargon? Are you trying to say things to make you sound more informed than you actually are? I care more about your passion than I do whether or not you've read every single blog on the topic on the internet. I would much rather hear why you're passionate about this idea, why you're passionate about this business, and that you understand what you're actually trying to accomplish than trying to impress me with big words. Is this a side hustle for you, or are you fully committed to this? And I do understand that there's a balance, especially with an early stage company. It can be imprudent to push all your chips into the middle of the table too early into your business. But there is a point in time where if you aren't putting enough of your own time, energy, and resources into this business, then it's not going to go anywhere. And I'm not going to feel comfortable putting capital behind something like that. Are you too optimistic about what it is you're trying to do? Everybody understands how big the cannabis industry is. Everybody understands that there's a lot of opportunity in this industry. But if I've seen 10,000 pro formas over my time investing in this space, 9,900 of them were far too optimistic in terms of what they thought they could actually do. Take it from me, it is extremely difficult to go from zero revenue to even $100,000 of revenue. So if you're going to sit across the table and tell me you're going to go from $0 in revenue to $5 million in revenue in 1 year, that's going to be a tough pill for me to swallow from an investor standpoint, because there are just very few companies that can actually do that. I don't care how big the market is. I don't care how good your data is. I don't care how many people you've talked to. That is a really tall order. Be realistic about what you actually think you can accomplish. Don't tell me you don't have any competitors in this space. There's always a competitor. There's always somebody doing something that is similar enough to what you're doing that you need to look at them as a competitor, not because they're going to take market share away, but because you can learn from what they're doing. You can learn from what they're doing right. You can learn from what they've done wrong along the way. So ensure that you've done your research and said, these are the 4 companies that maybe it's not exactly what we're doing, but they look like a lot like what we're doing, and we think they might be competitors to what we're doing. I also want to make sure that if you are a founder, you do have a little bit of expertise in what it is that you're doing. I don't want to talk to somebody who who has spent their entire career baking cookies, and now they want me to invest in their Chat GPT company. Those two things don't really align. Even if you have a best friend who knows everything about Chat GPT and he's going to work for you for free for the rest of time, then I want to talk to your friend about starting a company about Chat GPT. I don't want to talk to you about you moving from your bakery company to starting a Chat GPT company. And then the last one, I kind of hinted at it before, and it's a thread that runs throughout all of these. We have to make sure, and I said the word we intentionally because I'm speaking in terms of an investor. We have to make sure that we are as closely aligned as we can be in seeing this thing through. And the best way to do that is to make sure that we both have skin in the game. You're asking me to put my money into your business. You're asking me to support you. You're asking me to help you fund your dream. What is it that you're doing to fund your dream? Is it an equal playing field? I know that you may not have as much capital to commit, but what else are you committing to this so that I ensure that you're going to do everything you can to protect my investment, to grow my investment, and to build this company that we believe is going to be successful together? So that's just kind of, a little bit of some of it's anecdotal, some of it's firsthand experience. Like I said, I've sat on both sides of the table as it relates to companies specific to this industry, companies outside of this industry, and what I really am trying to do here is better prepare you for what the capital raising experience is going to look like, what options are available to you, and really just kind of add a little bit of reality to what the process is going to feel like while you're walking this path. That's all I got for you.
Levon, thank you. Those were some powerful insights and nuggets that you shared with us. And, so just a quick, we had Paul McLean join. Paul will close things out for us here in just a few minutes, but so far, just to recap what we've talked about, right? Rachel was talking about the foundational pieces of your business and your journey, making sure that your business, your brand, your assets, your intellectual property, all of that is protected, right? Make sure that you're going to be compliant. Gene talked about ensuring that you're working with a cannabis accountant to make sure that you have your financials in place. These are 2 huge building blocks that you want to make sure are covered before before you approach having these conversations related to capital investments, one of the, and Levon also confirmed how important it is to make sure that you have a strong foundation. Again, like I said, like in the survey form, like 90% of the participants here said that capital was their biggest barrier. So in order to get there, we need to make sure, and we're going to be working with you over the next couple of months to get some of those foundational elements in place. Before I transition over to Paul, I just want to share my screen real quick to, everybody has, all of the participants have access to the workbook that we created, which gives that outline about what this program looks like for the next few weeks. And this is where we are, right? Business foundations. In a few weeks, we're going to have an opportunity to have an in-person workshop where we can work on some of the tools. But if you really look at where the rest of the program goes, that brand building and storytelling is about helping you determine your value proposition, figuring out how you can communicate that value. Like Levon said, if you are pre-revenue, one of the things that might be appealing is for you to be able to communicate to a potential investor or a partner to, explain why they should invest in you. And part of that is going to be constructed around building a narrative that helps you communicate that vision to the people that you're trying to work with. We've also intentionally set it up so that we can have some relationship building events so that you can put some of these conversations into practice. We're also going to be working with some businesses and brands who may be actively looking to partner with you. And we're then going to have the opportunity to get you to participate in our Media Day event, which precedes the Cannabis Marketing Summit. So you have more opportunities to share that vision, talk about why someone should invest in you. Again, practice working with folks within the industry. And we think that by helping you get through some of those foundational pieces, you're going to be in a better place when it comes time for you to look for the appropriate types of financing or capital. And I like that Levon had mentioned that just trying to make sure that you're thinking through the different pros and cons, the trade-offs of accepting, capital investments, right? But right now, one of the activities that you all have access to that I encourage you all to work on over the next week are the SWOT analysis, which is really going to help us understand, okay, what are some of the strengths that you have right now? What are some of your internal weaknesses? It's going to help us figure out opportunities that'll set you apart. What are things that are preventing you from getting to where you need to go? This is going to be really important. And I encourage you all to take some time to answer some of these questions in this workbook, because we're going to have a chance to, get together over the next couple of weeks and really, do a deeper dive. I think it's important for us to have that foundational piece and answer those questions, because it's going to increase your chances of being in business for a longer period. I went through this process when I started my business 3 years ago, and I did this lean canvas exercise too. We're not going to cover all of that today, or we're not going to cover any of it today, but we will be going in detail about this during the workshop. Once you've taken those couple of steps and figured out, okay, what is it that's your strength? What's your weakness? We're going to talk about applying that. And then we're going to use some frameworks to help you, really have like a one-page vision. So even if you are pre-revenue and you're having conversations with people, you have something that's like your vision, your North Star that you can always refer back to. When I built my lean canvas 3 years ago, and I can show you that too. I'll bring that up. Boom. Right from the beginning, I figured out, okay, well, what's the problem? And look at this, July 21st, 2020. I didn't even have a name of a business at that point. That wasn't even 3 years ago, but I identified what the problems were. What were some of the solutions? This unique value proposition wasn't exactly clear at the moment, but it served as the basis of the vision and the mission statement that I've operated off of. But what was also important is I figured out what were some things that were my strengths, my unfair advantage. I had insider info in the industry and my personal authority, a large network effect. I've done so much work with community building that I knew that if I built that out, that's something that would differentiate me, my brand, my business from others, and it would not be easily replicated. And that's something that has been able to allow my business to be propped up and exist over time. So we're going to work with you to try to identify some of the same things. Okay. Finally, I'd like to connect you to Paul McLean. Paul actually participated in the first pilot mentorship program that we did with the CBO last summer. And he is the executive director of the Virginia Minority Cannabis Coalition, but he also has a lot of experience working with entrepreneurs and establishing a variety of successful businesses. He has had some experience leading cohorts himself. And I think just, for the last maybe 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, Paul, could you just share a little bit about, maybe that accountability piece? Now that we sort of shared the roadmap where we're trying to go,
Right.
what is important for our, what type of advice would you give to help ensure that people can be the most invested in this program over the months to come?
Well, I will say I'm going to try and do my best to cram in a lot of words in a really short period of time. But before I get started, because I'm going to talk real fast, I just had an opportunity. I want to say, Levon, big shout out to you. You were spitting straight fire today. Awesome presentation. Awesome. Ernest, well, I have worked with several cohorts, and this stems from the conversation you and I had before. And just to bring you all into that conversation, I ended up having the same conversation about people not seizing an opportunity when it's being put right in front of them, with 3 different friends across 3 different industries within the same week. And when I had that conversation, I was like, wait a minute, as a consultant and as an entrepreneur, it's like, wait a minute, that's a trend right there. Let me dive deeper into that. And when I did, just the responses back from these people, because they did training. Like I function in the cannabis space. The other 2 industries were the mental health industry, and then the other was publishing. And they all described a situation where there was funding available, grants available, some sort of resource or program for entrepreneurs, new startup entrepreneurs, to get some sort of leg up in a similar program to what we're dealing with right here. And in each one of those instances, it was a number that, I'll just speak from my own experience. When I did my first boot camp, it was all completely free. I got a medical MSO to pay for it, for all of the resources, 25 hours of video training, face-to-face classes for 4 weeks, 20 hours of classwork after the training for free. And we invited 50 people, 17 people accepted our invitation, 10 showed up, 8 finished. And those numbers are horrible, but that's real. And that's what I wanted to share in terms of, like you were talking about, Ernest, accountability. You got to make sure. There were so many things that Levon spoke about that you'll do in terms of having conversations and meeting with people. You got to know who you are before you sit down in that seat. And that involves a lot of personal growth and development. And that's an unfortunate thing, because that means you got to look at yourself. And that's painful as all get out. Reading books about self-improvement is what I used to think was Looney Tunes. But let me tell you, you will not meet a successful person that has not done something to improve themselves to get to where they are. Because if you already knew everything you needed to know to be successful in the space you're in, you would not be on this call. So the fact that we are all here means that there's always some improvement. I still today read books all the time. I'm always trying to learn. You got to be accountable to yourself, commit to yourself. And there's a couple things I'll share as I just shut up here. One, and I'm sharing from experience of working with numerous cohorts of people coming through our boot camps. I live in a state where you can't get a cannabis license, but I have over 50 people that are currently talking to investors and pursuing the next steps to be ready for licensure when it does happen. So I'm not just pulling this out of my Yahoo, okay? But number one, you got to give up television. That is the most amazing thing that people don't realize, how that sucks time away from your business. This gentleman just spoke a lot about being creative and coming up with concepts and fine-tuning your business and being able to talk about your business in depth without any sort of pitch deck. Why? Because the opportunity comes around like that. And you don't have your computer in a perfect setup. And that person's got a checkbook in their jacket. You got to be accountable and have done the practice before that time. And you got to give up television. The second thing I'll say is, one of the things that has blown me away working with numerous people is they don't understand in the beginning, you're taught to think like a W-2 employee. At 9 to 5, you think in terms of everything at 9 to 5. But as an entrepreneur, you think in terms of doing it until it's done and it's ready for the next step. You know, you don't just walk away from it because it's dinner time. You'll go without some sort of, meal for a period of time because you're committed to the project that you want to sit down and tell an investor is your dream. But you only want to put 40 hours a week into your dream. That's an insulting thing to say when you're asking somebody for $1 million. So you got to be accountable to yourself. So you got to give up the TV. You got to start to get out of the W-2 mindset, which typically comes from reading, listening, or watching something that's outside of what you're doing. And here's the last thing, and I'll shut up. Know why the heck you're doing this. Your why. Because that's what gives you that passion. That gentleman was talking about, he wants to talk to somebody that's passionate rather than somebody that's got some super stellar presentation. Let me tell you, as someone that used to be on the other side of the conversation, lending money to builders to build subdivisions and custom homes, all of that wordiness is great. But when I ask you questions about numbers, which you heard all these people talk about, and you can't tell me nothing about the numbers, you scare me away. Because you don't know anything about your dream. And that's a ding, ding, ding. So you can work on that stuff, but you got to commit the time. So you got to steal the time from somewhere, because we all got the same 24 hours. And some people in this lifetime become billionaires, and some people retire broke and destitute, living with family because they squandered that time. I speak as somebody that has had life almost taken from them through heart attack. I appreciate my time way more than a lot of people understand. And having an opportunity to do something you love and pour into people and help them build up their dream, it's a wonderful thing. But the best thing you can do is really take advantage of people pouring out like these folks, because they could be doing other things. And there's a lot of people that say they want what they dream and talk about, but they're only willing to do it if you can do it from a cell phone and an app. So that's not realistic in this world. So I realize time is short, man. I won't go into the rest of this, but I thank you. And I'm looking forward to this session, man. I'm on fire right now. And I'm looking to help as many people as possible get prepared, because the next 24 months is going to be very crucial in the cannabis industry on a national level.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, Paul. And thanks everybody else, Rachel, Jean, Levon, for sharing your knowledge today. Thanks for all of the participants who took that time to be here to listen and learn. We will make this recording available. You should expect to receive some communications from our team members this week. We, like I said, we like in the early emails, like we're trying to send a message out in the beginning of each week. And we'll try to get sort of a end of the week recap too. So check your inboxes for Friday and Monday. One of the final things is everyone has been paired with a mentor to this point. Really encourage you, if you haven't already, to connect with your one-on-one with your mentor over the next week. If you have not if you're not able to have that first meeting in place by the end of next week, please contact me. I will be checking in to make sure that everything is moving forward, but I just want to make sure that everybody involved in the program is getting that one-on-one attention. And if we need to have some substitutes, like, we have folks, other mentors that can step in, including myself. But yeah, feel free to give us an email or reach out with any questions that you have. And I hope you all have a great evening, and I look forward to seeing hopefully as many of you as possible in person at the workshop on May 12th. So y'all take care.
Later.